Okay. Perfect. So I am really excited to have you, Laura, my community city councillor, to really talk about so many different things. And I had an opportunity to meet with you while you were out in the community several times, and recently as well, with the Orleans Leading Women and Ladies gala or event. Um, and I loved really kind of hearing about the your approach really and your leadership and your commitment to the community and genuinely listening to folks as they're talking about the issues that they are experiencing or the positive experiences that they've had in the communities, all things. And so really excited to explore this with you and what it means to truly redefine leadership in the community and how we can also encourage more, girls and young women um, to get involved in the space, but also to really see themselves in this space as well, because there is that um, often that battle that we have within ourselves when we're trying to put a footstep forward and then we goes 10 steps back because we're not sure if this is the right space for us or if it's an inclusive space for us as women and girls. Um, but to kind of, before we dig a little bit deeper, I just wanted to ask you a few get to know you a little bit more questions that we'll have a fire round about. And so obviously I love Orleans. I'm all for
Me too.
folks, yes, obviously, folks dropping in and really exploring what Orleans is all about. Many folks are really drawn to downtown, so many pros and all those things, but I want folks to come here as well and really kind of enjoy and explore our space and our community. And so what would be, kind of a hidden gem in our community that you might feel is often overlooked?
Well, I would have to say that, the suburbs in Ottawa have so many hidden gems. And in Orleans, I've got two that are particularly near and dear to my heart. So, one I would have to say is Shankman Art Center is
Mm.
a phenomenal cultural and arts feature in the community. And if you think of a suburb, you don't often think of this hotspot for the arts and language, beaucoup de francophonie, performance à la MIFO, Shankman. So we have lots of francophone and French events there. And it's just a welcoming space. It's a beautiful building architecturally, and it's an opportunity for people to gather. So that is near and dear to my heart. And then also, I would have to say our green space. Again, when you think of suburban areas, you think houses upon houses and houses. And in particularly the older areas, areas that I represent in the East End, we have these beautiful green and natural spaces where again the community can gather, forested fields, and it's a bit of a hidden gem in that most people wouldn't think that they would find that.
Yeah.
But we who live here have the benefit
Yeah.
of enjoying it and maybe trying to keep it a little bit more of a secret so that it doesn't overrun. But I
Right.
love being out in our green spaces. So those are two of my most favorite, but there's so many to mention.
Yeah, no, those are great ones. Shankman Arts Center, definitely a wonderful one just to kind of really embrace culture and embrace this sense of unity and community and just I remember all the events that happen under the Shankman Arts Center and so it's just a wonderful hub and of course, definitely those hidden gems with the trails that we have going on that often we get overlooked. Everyone goes to get. So
Why?
right, exactly. So that's awesome. Thanks for kind of raising awareness on those kind of those trails there that we have. Um, oh, here's a good one I have for you. How would you describe Orleans in 3 words?
Oh, vibrant. So this is hyphenated, up and coming,
Oh, love that.
and community.
Oh,
Yeah,
those are some strong words. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I even remember just moving into Orleans, uh, you know, a decade ago, really, and now I'm seeing even, more folks moving into this space, seeing, newcomers coming into Orleans and just staying here and just so it's awesome to see that level of representation growing across our community as well. So that's so wonderful to see. Now as a local Orleaner,
I don't,
do we have?
Orleans residents, I'll go with that.
Yeah,
It's like
exactly.
Ottawadian. How do you say this?
Yeah,
It doesn't sound right.
Ottawan, yeah. So we're gonna shift gears a little bit. So I've seen you out in the community personally, door knocking and talking to folks and really trying to get a good perspective of, what's going on in the community, what would you like to see happen? What is a constant concern or issue that you've heard about most essentially in your ward, really?
Yes, in my word. So I would say
Mhm.
investment in our community and investment in our infrastructure. And I know that sounds super dry, but it's not. And when I say investment in our infrastructure, it's not just people talking about their roads or their sidewalks, filling potholes. They're talking about continuing to see investment and maintenance of our community spaces. So our recreation facilities, our outdoor, basketball facilities, like everything that brings our community together
Mhm.
is what they're looking to see continued engagement in and investment in by the city. Historically, many of our residents have felt that a lot of the investment has gone to other areas of the city, the West End, the South End, because those areas were booming. There's lots of development, lots of growth. So the city historically had been spending a lot of time and energy and money in those areas. Orleans hadn't grown for a very long time, and now we're seeing a huge amount of growth in areas like South Orleans, as you mentioned, lots of
Mhm.
diversity, lots of new people coming to our community, lots of people choosing to stay in the community but moving into new facilities, homes. So we didn't see a lot of investment. So now we're starting to see that. And that's where I go back to that up and coming phrase, and that we are, that hidden gem. We have all this opportunity. We need to, as a city, continue to invest in it and make sure that
Mhm.
anything is older, we're investing and renewing it, and that we're adding new features to accommodate new people who are moving here and young
Yeah.
people who want to see things that may not have been available before, but they want to see it now. So I want to say, in continued investment in our infrastructure and the facilities that we all enjoy.
Yeah, no, that's such a great one because you're absolutely right, and more folks want to stay because it's oftentimes the struggle in terms of, access to services or how do we where's the investment in my community? I'm not seeing this happening as quickly perhaps as you would see in other communities. And so that is such a great point is like how can we make folks stay in our community and investing in our spaces that are often being used and taking care of the older spaces that we also have as well that we're often utilizing, right? So it's just a great point. Um, and so within the work that you've done, as a city councillor, is a bit of a reflection piece for you. What would be kind of a small change that you have implemented that you feel or that you've seen or you heard has made a big difference in within the ward?
Well, that's a great question. And
Mhm.
when I was first elected in 2018,
Mhm.
which feels like it was yesterday, but it's not. My age tells me otherwise. I had heard from so many people that they felt that Orleans was forgotten, that we were being left behind, that the city was focusing on other areas, and that, we weren't seeing whether it was, road renewal or we weren't seeing transit extended and improved out in our community. We weren't seeing
Yeah.
our parks and our play structures renewed. There was nothing new that they were seeing that would benefit them.
Mm.
So, for me, I've really kind of made it a huge priority of every day, every year, every time that I've gone to City Hall to say, listen, don't forget about Orleans. Make
Mhm.
sure that when we're making decisions, we're also investing in our community, that we're giving back to the residents who live here, who are dedicated to the entirety of the city, but live in Orleans. And so,
Mhm.
one of the things that I'm particularly proud of and I thank the residents who have really continued to flag these issues to me, was making sure that our green spaces were being invested in. I was going to say I've renewed almost every single splash pad in every park in the
Yes.
ward. Every one of them has been renewed. They used to be these antiquated spray nozzles that didn't work half the time. So young kids are enjoying it.
Yeah.
I've taken it to heart that we needed more. We have a lot of green space, but we need to preserve that. We lost a lot of
Mhm.
trees from, invasive species like emerald ash borer. So
Yeah.
over the years, I've been involved in organizing tree plantings. Yesterday, we just planted
Amazing.
1,000 more trees on a
Wow.
newly owned city green space
Yeah.
on Saint Joseph, and that means 2,000 trees were planted in the last year on that space alone, in addition
Yeah.
to all the other ones across the community. Um, I'm actually in the process of trying to add a gymnasium to Bob McQuarrie Recreation Complex,
Oh,
Orleans,
wonderful.
because of the fact I've heard from people that we don't have enough facilities for seniors or older people to play pickleball, and young
Right.
people are looking for basketball facilities, but we don't have enough. So I'm trying to meet the needs where they are. I'm a big
Mm.
fan of listening to my residents and advocating for what they are asking me to do. So I
Mhm.
am there to be their conduit to
Yes.
city hall and services and improvements and investment, and that is the role
Mhm.
I choose to play as their public servant.
Yeah, and that's such a critical role to play as well because oftentimes the unfortunate narrative is, okay, so now someone has come and listened to me. Now what? What is the result that I'm going to see unravel in my community, or will it be done, or will something be done, right? And so it's wonderful to kind of see you actively engaging, but also actively voicing those concerns and putting things into kind of actionable pieces where folks are actually seeing this, happening in the community. So that's pretty awesome. So I really feel like I've gotten to know you a little bit better in terms of how you connect with the community and how you want Orleans to be, or what you want Orleans to be known as. It already is, but how can we amplify it a bit more? And just kind of how you respond to people's everyday experiences and concerns that they flag for you. So I want to go back a little bit because I feel like we often see people in their roles, but we don't really talk about the journey that got us to where we are currently, right? So, what was your aha moment that you had or that you'd experienced that really kind of led you to get into this space?
Well, that's a great question. I would say there was a series of aha moments, but
Mm.
I think for me it was a street party.
Oh,
So for me, I had been a journalist. I was working as a newspaper journalist for
wow.
about 8 years, and I had three wonderful children, very young. Two of them were very young, and then my
Mm.
incredible stepdaughter. And I lived on this beautiful street in Blackburn Hamlet, where I still live right now. And I was volunteering in the community. And what happened was I had started kind of volunteering in different facets. So I was on the parent council, but it was limited to my family, right? Like I was trying to give back to my
Mm.
children, and I was engaged in that.
Mhm.
And then I realized that I really wanted to spend this amazing quality time with my neighbors. And I started going door to door, and I chatted with folks, and they're like, we would love a chance to get together. And there used to be a street party. We used to always get together for street parties, but
Wow.
nobody's organized it. So I thought, I'm going to organize it. So I organized the street party, and everybody came out, not just my street. It was streets adjacent because everybody had used to do this thing, but nobody had taken the
Yeah.
initiative. So they all came out and they got together. And then somebody was chatting with me about, well, there's this community association that represents our community, the Blackburn Community Association. You should get
Mhm.
involved because they always do fun stuff and it's great, and it's a little bit broader than just our streets. And so I,
Mm.
I went to a meeting, and the next thing you know, as you'll know, as anybody who knows, when you walk into a volunteer group,
Yes.
you've been volunteered. Like it's just the way
Mhm.
of the world. And
Yeah.
so I ended up joining this community association, and I spent 10 years with the community association. Um,
Mm.
I was president of it for about, I think it was 8 years. That's a little bit back now. And
Yes.
under that umbrella, I was able to work with so many people and start to really understand what were some of the needs in the community outside of my own street and my need for a street party. So
Mm.
it was those
Mm.
things that kind of aligned, combined with my work at the time as a journalist covering a vast array of political issues and community issues. And I started to realize, for me, I wanted to do more. I wanted to
Mm.
be a voice at the table. I wanted to fill in the gaps. When people were asking me to do things, I could only do so much as a journalist telling other people's stories. And as a
Mm.
volunteer, I wanted to be at that table and have a say. So it kind of started through a different couple of different formats, really me trying to become more engaged with my own neighbors, which led to volunteerism on a grander scale, which led to politics.
Wow. That's interesting. I mean, all started just with the street party of that's amazing. Just to kind of see how it all flourished. And I wanted to ask you this because we do often hear about kind of the end result, but we don't really know how folks got there or like what inspired them to get there. So thank you so much for sharing your story with me today. So you did mention kind of stepping into something that wasn't, I guess, in a way clear, or you didn't know where that journey might end up or where it might lead you. Or perhaps it was expected or unexpected. Yes,
It was
expected.
unexpected, to be
Yeah.
quite frank.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of folks can certainly relate to that because we take some unin unintentional steps, really, like the volunteering. But it leads us to the pathway that we are supposed to be in today. So one of the things I wanted to ask you was why do you think, even from your experience, that there is this level of hesitancy or shyness for young women or even girls to really kind of get into that space and run in the communities? Like what have you seen or what have you heard or what have you experienced? I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
That's an excellent question. And, being in my role, I get to
Mhm.
speak to so many young women and women in general who have shared their hesitancy with me to maybe it's to get into politics, maybe it's to run for another role, such as a trustee, or even just take that leadership role in our community. And I think it kind of it's different for everybody, but I think in a large respect, it's because there's a little bit of a fear of failure. There's a fear of, how can I add more to my already busy schedule? Many women are raising families and having jobs, and how do they do more when they already are feel like their days are full? How do we come out of our shell, put ourselves on that podium, and find a way to be still strong, independent women who are unflustered by the criticisms that being a leader often elicits from other members of the community. So I think there is that nervousness about, putting yourself out there, being afraid to fail, being afraid that you're going to have to go it alone. You may
Mm.
have your family, but once again, it's hard when you're that symbol of leadership. People will take pot
Mm.
shots at you. It's just almost guaranteed. So I,
Right.
I really, I try to strive to tell all women, give it a try.
Mm.
It's you have to put yourself out there sometimes. Each one of us brings such value to our community in different ways. And we all have different lived experiences, and everyone is contributing such
Mhm.
phenomenal aspects and values and thoughts and ideas. If you stay silent, we will never know that. And that is a disadvantage to all of us. So put yourself out there.
Mhm.
Failure is only an opportunity to grow. I've failed. We've
Yeah.
all failed. We tell our
Yes.
kids that, but it's so hard as grown-ups to do that. So, uh,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes we have to strain the boundaries a little bit and put ourselves out there.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point, and it's so it's very real in the sense of failure. looked at such a disgrace or a really horrible thing, to how can we kind of shift that narrative in a way, because we hear it so many times about all the successes from
Yeah.
leaders, whether you're in politics or not, we only hear about all like the wonderful things that they've accomplished, but what about the failures, right? We don't hear about that. So it's also a societal influence as well, in terms of, oh, I haven't heard anyone fail, so I don't want to be the first. But that's really wonderful and refreshing to hear about, in the sense of everyone fails, but you learn from it and you grow, and you have to put yourself out there, or else, staying silent, won't unfortunately get you to places, because we want to be our own advocates, and we want to advocate for our communities and the people that we're, obviously with on a regular basis. So that's such a great point to bring. And I want to also kind of dig a bit deeper when we're talking about the hesitancy. Um, what have been perhaps any systemic barriers, or maybe I should ask, are there any systemic barriers that you feel still exist, for women to be into politics or take on kind of those leadership roles, um, based on kind of your experience or what you hear in the community that you've seen or heard about?
As much as I would like to say that there weren't,
Yeah.
there are, and they
Mm.
continue. And
Yeah.
it always boggles my mind that women represent, I think it's 51% of the population in Ottawa, not just
Mhm.
in Canada, around the world, in Ottawa. And yet our level of representation, whether it's in political forums or in the business community or in different facets, is less than half. And one of the things that I'd like to say, it's not just women, it's people of diversity are underrepresented.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I think is the biggest struggle is, again, putting ourselves out there, because oftentimes those systemic barriers that exist are consistent because there's not enough of us who are voicing our concerns about it. So I know at the city, we have been taking great strides to try to break down the hurdles that were in place. In 2021, City Council approved the Women and Gender Equity Strategy to
Mhm.
try to see things with a new lens and really address any of those issues that existed. We have started to see that actually make huge change within the city. We have a woman at the city manager for the first time in the city's history, Wendy Stephenson. Almost all of our general managers are women. We still
Mhm.
don't
Wow.
have equal representation at the council chamber, in the council chamber at City Hall, but the women who sit on council, myself included, we
Mhm.
almost all of us have significant roles as committee chairs, as
Mhm.
leaders on council. We're very vocal. We don't tend to be a shy group, which is amazing. But
That's awesome.
again, we don't see a lot of diversity. And I think one of those things, and I spoke to it a moment ago about that fear of failure, is what I want women to know is we're all in this together. And
Mm.
so if they do put themselves out there, they are not alone. We as women are there to support them and lift them up. That is our job as a
Mm.
collective. And that, having more women requires more women to support those individuals who want to stand in front, who want to be that leader. So, again, for me, I think it's identifying where there are barriers, talking to individuals who have different lived experiences and saying, what is holding you back? How can we help? Because
Mhm.
that is where we can say, all right, that doesn't need to be there anymore. Let's break through that. We'll do it together. You're not alone.
I love that emphasis on community, because that is often the concern is, I feel like I'm in this by myself, or I feel like this journey, that I'm the only person kind of running it in the journey that I've kind of wanted to try out or whatnot. And so it's so wonderful to hear that you're essentially building a community of practice. Like, how can we continue to lift folks up? How can we continue to encourage more women to engage, in the politics? Um, because you're absolutely right in the sense of, there is a lack of diversity, and And it's oftentimes part of the barriers. If you don't see yourself represented, it's that hesitancy of, well, I okay, how come? Do I
Exactly.
want to be the first one? Or how do I, what does that mean if I am the first person, And so there are all of these multi-layered barriers that women face, if you're an immigrant or a woman of color, if you have a disability, all of those things. And so it's so wonderful to kind of also not to just say, yes, we're represented, but we can do better. Like how, right?
Exactly.
So thank you for for talking about that. I think that's really awesome to hear. Um, in the sense
May
of,
I just add one thing
yeah,
too?
of course.
Young women in
Mm,
particular.
mhm,
All women, of course, but I
mhm.
find that, you know, myself as a politician, I'm making decisions that are going to have implications for future generations. And
Yes.
when I
Good point.
talk to young women and they are either not, they're disinterested in politics, or they don't think that there's a role for them, there absolutely is, and there should be. And I want them, if they don't want to run, support a female leader that they can back.
Mm,
Because at the end of the day, almost every young woman that I speak to has very strong thoughts about their community and what they would like to see and what they want to
yeah.
do, but we're not seeing them represented. So, I'm not going
Mm,
to tell you how old I am. I'm a middle-aged woman. I ran when I was younger. I have some experience, but
yes.
once again, to have young voices at the table
Yes.
is essential because they're making decisions that will have impacts for them and their livelihood and their quality of life within our city. So,
Mm,
I want to stress again, having young voices too, young
mhm,
women, is phenomenally beneficial to the greater good of the
mhm,
community because they're looking at it from that fresh lens of, you know, how do we support young moms? How do we support teenagers? How do we support all these young people that have all these phenomenal thoughts about how do we move our city in the right direction? They
mhm.
know because they're living it.
Yeah, that is such a great point because often that isn't in the scope of what we often hear is what is this how does this going to impact the future generation or how can we get the future generation more involved now, not after, but right now. So that is such a great point because it's absolutely true. Whatever decisions that are made is going to impact the future generation. And so how can we get more young girls or young women to engage in those actions in the community as well? So such a great point. Um, so I want to talk about kind of the core theme of our conversation today is about redefining leadership. Um, and oftentimes we spoke about this earlier, you hear it, but then you're like, okay, well, what does this mean? Like how is this supposed to roll out? Um, some folks see it, some folks don't. And so I wanted to ask you this. So when you hear redefining leadership, which I personally feel like you have been doing, in the role that you are in the ward, which is so amazing to see. What do you think it should mean or look like in practice?
I think that's a phenomenal question. And when I think of leaders, they're all very different. They
Mm,
bring such different skill sets and approaches. And a leader isn't, it's not just a politician. It's not just, the head CEO of a company. A leader can be someone who starts a street party and gets their neighbors together and starts talking. It can be somebody who is deeply upset about something that is happening in their community or to them, and they make a change. They start, a fundraising initiative to help others. It's somebody who steps out of themselves and takes the initiative to help others. That's what
mm,
I really see as a leader. And I think, you know, we can't all be alpha personalities, being in front of the cameras and doing media interviews. That's not all of us.
yeah.
I'm a very different person than other women that I have met who prefer to be a little bit more behind the scenes, but that doesn't negate the fact
Mm,
their input, their contribution to the community is just as valid, if not maybe more so in many cases, because they're giving back. But I do think leadership is stepping outside of ourselves and giving back to help others. Because when you do that, you actually help yourself. You're helping your own family. By bettering
Mm,
everyone, you're bettering your own circumstances. And
mhm,
sometimes it's really hard to see that because our lives are so busy and we're so inundated with everything else around us. And there's so much negativity in this world. But if every person just does one good thing every day that helps others,
mhm.
this community, this city, this world will be a better place for everyone.
Yeah, that is such a wonderful point, is especially because you're absolutely right. We see leaders kind of in the front line, and then we see leaders kind of wanting to be behind the scenes. But often, the unfortunate dialogue is that, well, I feel like they're doing a bit more because I see them front and center, which is not the reality. To your point, they're doing the exact same amount of work that builds and that implements, good change within their community. Um, and what you mentioned, isn't so far out of fetch, because that's something that you also learn in school in a way, right? Like, how can we give back to folks around us? How can we build those like selfless acts? How can we continue to include folks, and how can we continue to learn and hear from folks and just actively listen without uh speaking out or trying to build some sort of solution. Sometimes folks just want to be listened to and heard, and so it's such a good definition, also by practice, because you do practice that as well in terms of what it means. I even see the Facebook group where folks are reaching out, all these construction things are happening. How does this work? And, local businesses are reaching out about, some concerns or experiences that they've had. And I see you, actively engaging and, with folks and hearing them out and reaching out to them to build some sort of solution, right? And so it's so wonderful to kind of see it in action, as well. So I want to shift gears a little bit, because leadership. I'm sure folks. You hold several hats at the same time, all at once,
Right.
right? All at once. So how do you balance, you know, in leadership as well, like, how do you balance being approachable for folks to feel safe enough, to feel vulnerable enough to engage in conversation with you, with kind of that collaborative approach of making decisions that are firm and maybe sometimes unpopular decisions as well.
Yeah.
So how do you approach that, or how do you balance that while you're doing this in practice in the work that you do every day?
That's excellent question. Excellent question. And I think there's a couple of skills that I've tried to master over
Mm,
time. One is listening. Politicians are renowned for talking. We're always talking. We're always giving long-winded speeches or promising things. And, I try to listen more than I speak, particularly to residents,
mm,
because if I'm talking, I'm not listening, I'm not paying attention. Why am I there if I'm not going to listen to the people that have elected me to do their work? So
mm,
I really try to see it as I am in my position, not for me, I'm there for them. Sometimes I have made decisions that I don't actually deeply want to see as a resident myself, but I know it's for the betterment of the community. The majority of my residents want
mm.
to see it. Maybe I would like to see A, but they would like to see B, and the vast majority says B is what they would like. I'm going to do B because I'm not there for me, I'm
Right.
there for them. So listening
Mhm.
is one of them. And then I think honesty,
Okay.
honesty with residents, honesty with myself. Politics gets such a bad rap. I mean, we're constantly talking about,
It
and
does.
it's tough because maybe it took me being a politician to really fully understand it. Politicians are human. Surprise, we're all human. Even people in the very top echelons of power, they're still human. Stuff is still it's still important as a politician to be very honest with folks. And even then when I have to deliver them bad news. So,
Mm,
a resident can reach out to me and ask for something to be done. And I will take the most honest route possible and say, listen, this is the facts. I will try my best or I will look into it, but I cannot promise anything.
mm,
Or, I don't know that this is feasible or possible, but I will look into it. And if not, I will try to work with your community. Sometimes it's something that a resident wants that will be different from what their neighbors will want. And I'll say, I'm sorry, but the majority of people would prefer this. It's a democracy. I have to go with the majority. But I
Mm.
really try to find ways to, uh, you know, facilitate, collaborate, and make sure that I'm finding ways to make as many people as happy as possible. And
Mhm.
usually honesty is the best policy, because folks will come back and say, I didn't like what you said. I didn't like that you weren't able to immediately get my street repaired, or immediately get this sign removed, but you told me why. And so I take a
Mm.
lot of time, and I really spend a lot of energy writing really in-depth responses to people. I don't want to brush people off. So honesty and listening, um, and then bringing people together. One of my favorite things to do is
Yes.
to, when I hear somebody, it could be a business owner, it could be a resident, it could be something, and they have an idea, or they're excited about something. And then in the back of my head, I'm like, because of my role, I will hear of other people who can complement them, support them, or give them an avenue to success. So one of my favorite things is putting people together and seeing the sparks fly. And that's where we get some of those amazing, like, music festivals, or community groups will apply for grants, because I was had the benefit of being able to tap them into it. And we see these things ignite interest and spark engagement in our community. So I really see myself as being able to facilitate some of those opportunities that then people will run with. So I'm just the middleman, middle woman.
Yeah. Middle home. That is so amazing to hear because that is the reality, right? In the sense that you can't promise things all the time, or because you make decisions based on the majority and all those things, and that is the reality. And so, um, I love your emphasis on transparency because oftentimes you hear about, well, they said they were going to do this and they didn't give me an explanation or anything about timelines or when I could see this happening or anything. So it's really wonderful to hear, the acknowledgement and having kind of those really intentional discussions and to actively also say, I'm going to hear you out. I can't promise you that this is going to happen, but I'm going to hear you out.
Yeah.
Right? And so that is, I think, if anything, one of the most kind of important pieces for sure in terms of engagement and all those. So it's really refreshing to kind of hear your approach. And the follow-up I have for you is because you do balance a lot. How do you intentionally also disconnect as a person in this space? Because that's
It's
hard.
difficult. It's difficult, and it's funny because you probably just saw my daughter just poke her head in.
Oh,
So
I
it's it's one of those things where you've got to realize you can't be all things to all people all the time.
Mm,
You have to. I always try to prioritize my family in many instances, because at the end of the day, I love this role that I play for our community. My family is my backbone.
mm,
They are the
mhm.
ones that are always going to be who I turn to in times of need, or when I'm seeking something to bounce ideas off of. So
Yeah.
I certainly try to make sure that they know that they come first.
Yes.
Except for
Yeah.
during an interview.
Yeah.
But it's, one of the things is, and I don't know if it's a female trait. I apologize if I sound like I'm being stereotypical, but we're really good at multitasking. We
Yes.
can juggle all sorts of things. And the fact is that it's knowing what's important at any given time. And sometimes,
Mhm.
it's the job, and sometimes it's the family, and sometimes it's, answering an email, and sometimes it's making a phone call, and sometimes it's, taking time for ourselves. So we
Mm.
need to always understand that can change at any given moment. But I will say that I do struggle sometimes with taking time to myself. One of the things, I mean, we've met in the community. One of the things that I deeply love, and why I'm really honored to do this role, is I love talking to people. I just love
Mm.
it. I don't. I don't have any problem chatting with a person in the grocery store or at a gas station. I'm usually the one that engages, starts the conversation for some unknown reason. But I find that do what makes you happy,
Mm,
prioritize what you need to at any given time, realize
mm,
that, if you turn the phone off for 5 minutes and don't answer that work call, but you spend time with your loved ones, or, you prioritize yourself, it's not the
mhm.
end of the world. You're still
I
going to
love
get
that.
back to that. It's not,
Yeah.
we don't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
We can overemphasize that necessity in our lives, but it's not a
Hmm.
huge deal, right? People will forgive
Yeah.
us if we take 5 minutes to recharge our batteries and
Hmm.
take
Yeah.
time. So I think it's more
Yeah.
about just, we can multitask with the best of them. Sometimes it's good just to focus on one thing.
That is so awesome to hear because I think that's also kind of feeds into perhaps that hesitancy. I already wear a lot of hats. I'm already a lot of things to a lot of folks. How how can I disconnect, right? How do I take care of myself? Or can I even take care of myself? What would that even look like? And so it's so wonderful to hear that in the sense of like, you're allowed to just pause and say, I need a 5 minute to just, whether that's like a 5 minute meditation, 5 minutes to step back and pause and be present for something else that you absolutely need and crave at that moment, and then go back. So emphasize in the sense of nothing is going to fail if you take
Yeah.
care of yourself is so wonderful to hear. And I think a lot of women, young women, girls, often feel like, even for myself, I'm like, I feel like I need to be, XYZ, 16 things at the same time. And then often the reality is sometimes you're at the bottom of the priority list because you feel like you need to get all of this stuff done. But it's so great to just pause and just take a deep breath and focus on yourself for however long you need before you get back into it. So, thanks for emphasizing that. I think that's something that we need to hear more often than we do. Um, so I want to kind of think about, forward looking and kind of the next steps into the future and things like that. Or even like what you would love to hear when you were at a younger age, when you first started to kind of get into the space as well. Um, if you could give kind of one piece of advice, maybe to your younger self or even to like the future generation who are contemplating getting into the space, getting into politics, getting more involved, what would it be?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would certainly say jump right in. Don't be afraid. And if you're afraid, you're probably doing the right thing. I remember, so I used to, when I was younger, I used to
Mm,
try to act, I danced, I did things, and every time before I got on stage, I got butterflies. No matter how many years I did, no matter how much I trained, no matter how it felt like it was by rote, I would get butterflies. To this
mm.
day, and maybe I shouldn't share this, but I'm going to share it anyway. To this day, if I go
Yes.
do a speech as a politician, I get butterflies right before,
Hey,
which is
yes.
wild because I've been doing this all the time. I'm constantly doing it, but I still get butterflies. Don't worry about being afraid.
Hmm.
Sometimes more exciting in life to take that jump, to take that leap. And again, I want to stress, particularly to women and young women, you're not alone. We are all in this. And when you take that
Mm.
leap, we'll catch you. We've got you. Don't
Oh,
worry
that
about
is so
it.
wonderful.
It's
Yes.
the only way that we will
Yeah.
see that increased representation, the increased diversity, because people can talk, we can all talk about it. But unless we see more women and more women supporting them, it's not going to change. And I
Mm,
really deeply believe, like I'm a mom of a son, I've got two daughters, so I see all sides of it. I love my kids deeply, but I want my girls particularly to know that there is nothing that they can't do.
mm,
My son as well, but he has a lot of doors open to him that they won't have. So I want young women to know that I want to see you involved in your community, in politics, in leadership, in business, in tech, in anything you want to do. And I and everyone will be there to support you because It's important that you're there. It's important you're participating.
Wow, that is such a powerful message, and it's wonderful to hear that, because that is part of the concern, right? Is in terms of it's the fear, it's the unknowing of what happens also behind the scenes. So thank you for sharing that story. To me, you were absolutely very put together when you did the speech when I was at the event. So I wouldn't know. But those are the things that folks won't know, right? But that is the normalcy. We need to bring that emphasis on normalcy of what actually happens, what actually transpires, this pressure of perfectionism when you're in that role, it doesn't exist, right? And so the piece about, you know, really kind of hearing that echo of I got your back. Get into the space, I got your back. And that's so wonderful to hear. So I spoke about this earlier with you, is that I let folks, with Blood of Woman series who follow the series as well know that I will be having this conversation. And one of the audience questions that we received, which I think it's incredibly relevant just because of the space that we're in the realm of social media. And so the question that was asked was, how has social media and its toxicity affected, or how do you feel that it's affected women's willingness to run in the space of politics?
I would say it has had a phenomenal impact. It
Mm,
has had an awful impact. So, again, being in politics is a leap of faith. It's putting yourself out there. It always has been. And then add social media to it. And I know, talking from my own experience, I have people criticizing me based on my gender about what I'm wearing on any given day, what color my hair is, if I look tired. What the heck does that even matter? Does that have any impact on my ability to
yes.
do my job and to support my
Yes.
community? Absolutely not. And again, I would love to say that they're only targeting women. They're probably targeting men as well, but it just seems to be constant with
Mm,
myself and my female colleagues. I've actually chatted with my council colleagues on many occasions about this very thing, and they experience the exact same thing. And I think that, that's an excellent question, because that is something that I would never want to sugarcoat. If somebody was looking to run for office or any leadership role, they will encounter it. It is a given. And I'm finding that social media is getting worse with every day that passes. It seems like, the anonymity of
mm,
social media empowers people to say things that they would never say to you in person.
absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
what I would say though is, again,
Mhm.
don't let that hold you back. You know
Mm,
what? I don't pretend that what I see on my phone is real life. What I do is I go talk to people. I actually go and I door knock all the time. Outside of elections, I want to talk to people. I go to events, I talk to people, and I say, what are you thinking? What are your priorities? What do you feel? And I will tell you, almost every single person I chat with, and I'm not being facetious, almost every single person might have a criticism for me, but they couch it in a positive tone, or they give good feedback. They are maybe overwhelmingly engaged in the conversation because I reached out to them and they're not involved in social media. What we see on social media is not real. What
mm,
people say to you in person, when they send you an email, they call you, they take the time to care, to actually reach out as a person, is real. So I take everything I see on social media with a grain of salt. I certainly watch what is being said because I want to make sure that I'm representing even those people that do find that as an active outlet. But I always double check myself, and I try to not take things too personally, because I
mm,
know that at the end of the day, my role is to represent the silent majority of the residents that I serve, the ones that might not want to put themselves out on social media but have reached out to me or I'm talking to at events. And I realize that, at the end of this, whenever my end of term comes, my end of being a politician comes, I retire, people, I understand, I might, want to move on to something else. Not yet. I'm running again the next, not
like
yet.
where you
But
going? Yes.
once again, there will come an end point for me in this career. I
Mhm.
want to look back and say, I made the right decisions for the majority of people. And
Mm.
social media is not going to be the thing that dictates how I vote or how I advocate for my residents. It will be those personal interactions. That is reality.
Yeah, that is a great point because social media kind of it definitely begins to take over how we're feeling on the inside. And do you feel depleted? Do you feel, you're made for this role? Like all of those things, right? You start questioning, did I make the right decision about what I'm doing? So I really appreciate that advice of just compartmentalizing its noise, all of those things, and kind of focusing on the active engagement of actually hearing from folks what is happening, what's not happening. And you're absolutely right. It is an era where I myself, even as a person, it is very scary of what's happening, and what we often see happening in social media and the level of influence that it has on folks on how they approach things and how what they take in as authentic or real. And so thank you for kind of bringing that. And that was such an excellent question from
And
the
yes,
audience as well. Very relevant to where we're at this age. Um, so many things to kind of take away and reflect on what you've shared with me today on your experience and your journey and the barriers that you've had to overcome and that you've seen and heard about from other folks in the community. So I want to really, from the bottom of my heart, really thank you for sharing your honesty and your perspective with me today. And it really is conversations like this is exactly why and how you see start to a shift or to shift to a narrative of what things need to look like and what leadership can look like in the realm of politics as well, and who sees themselves in it as well. So I really appreciate your time and your vulnerability and all that you do for my community as well. So I appreciate your time. Thank you for joining me today.
thank you for inviting me and thank you for everything you do. Like, it is phenomenal that you are getting the word out about amazing people in our community doing amazing things. And I think that that is very important because we all very greatly appreciate it. So thank you for what you do.
Thanks, Laura.